Hey everyone, how are you? It is awesome to see you, and I am really excited for this stream. So whether you are watching live or watching the recording, I hope that you will forgive me for being sort of slightly out of practice at the moment, because I am a couple of months out of practice, essentially, for developing, like giving a live stream. But I hope to see a yeah. So I really hope to see everyone, and feel free to participate in the comments or anything else that you would like. If you are joining me live, you are more than welcome to ask questions. I'll be monitoring the chat periodically. The only thing to note is that I have a slight delay. And so if you ask a question, there will be a bit of a lag. It's absolutely wonderful to see everybody, and I'm absolutely looking forward to discussing what is kind of an interesting problem. Well, actually, no, my intent here is to provide something that's really useful, and that is people's first Rust application. And what people normally do when they start to build Rust apps is they want to build command line utilities. So what do I mean? So if I create a function like print line and hello from New Zealand, but it's quite late in the evening, by the way. It's 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday. So, and I run cargo run, and I will get some output. Hello from New Zealand. There's a bunch of other stuff as well. Rust is telling me that it's compiling. The compiler has finished, and now it's executing the binary. Cargo is a utility for invoking the Rust compiler. I can add -q, and that will quieten the output down. And I'll just give myself some more space. And we say hello from New Zealand. So hi, good evening, good morning, good day. It's really nice to see you. Okay, so I've got this little command line app called Wet, and Wet's job is to put weather in your terminal. And to put weather in your terminal, I want to do a couple of simple things. We're going to rely on an external API, and I'm not being paid or sponsored to do this in any way, but I thought it would be much easier to use an actual weather service rather than try and like forecast the weather myself, or just kind of have like a random number generator. So I'm just going to sort of do this in 4 stages. Firstly, I'll just plan. Step 1 is create a CLI and a command line utility. Now, the command line utility's job, essentially, all we really want to do is parse arguments. So we want to be able to accept an argument, specifically how many days into the future we want to predict, and then I want to go and look up what the weather will be like from some external API, and then parse the JSON and like output that to the screen. So we need to be able to make an HTTP request and parse its output. It turns out that a lot of this stuff you would expect in a systems language like Rust to be really difficult, especially if you are used to some sort of other of its peer languages. But actually, the Rust ecosystem for web is really strong. At least that's what I hope. And 3, nice output, maybe. If we get enough time, I tend to if you want to add emoji support or ASCII art, maybe we'll leave that as an exercise to the reader. And okay, so let's rock on. I'm using this service called Open Weather Map. So I'll just add that to the chat. If you are from YouTube and or Twitch, in fact, I'm streaming 5 p.m. or 17 o'clock in the afternoon. Sadly for me, it is significantly later, but that's okay. And I just give the I have sent the URL to YouTube and Twitch, but if you are watching on LinkedIn or on my Twitter feed, then that won't work. It's openweathermap.org. Okay, cool. So our first job is to kind of create some sort of API. And to do this, I'm going to add on the command line again. I'm going to cargo add clap. And clap is a command line argument parser that provides a number of default features. And we actually want to pull in a couple of others. So what this is doing is touching our it's going to be updating our dependency graph. So actually, I'll delete all of this and we'll just see it in action. If I add clap, it just adds clap. And there are two features that I want to add. And one is derive. This is the most important one. And the other one I want to add is wrap helper. So the derive feature kind of enables a declarative way to create your command line arguments through a defined type. And the wrap help, I think it's wrap help. There it is. Yep. Provides the ability for your application when it is running to change the width of its argument, of its output, depending on how wide the terminal is that it will be running within, rather than just having, say, a fixed width of 80 characters. If you have any questions, there are a couple of people that are visiting me at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. And so power to you. I appreciate that a great deal. Please do subscribe to my channel so that you can be notified of when it is not 5 a.m. I'm going to try to stream more regularly, and that will involve being available both and multiple times in the day. Hopefully you won't always need to visit see me at 4 a.m. If you're kind of enjoying it, then that's all good too. Okay, so let's create a structure. And our structure, actually, first thing we need to do is import clap. And specifically, I think we need to bring in parser. Now I will, oh my God. 32 hours programming? What? Okay. People do things. I did that a long time ago when I did not have children, but now that I do, it's been a long time since I have spent so much time doing so. Anyway, so struct app args. We want some structure that will like basically collect all of our arguments together, and we're going to have a single argument. This will be a number of days. And we don't need much space. We're just going to use 1 byte, which means that we can have up to 255 days in principle. However, in practice, the API that I've subscribed to only gives me access to 5 days of forecast. So have fun asking for, 3 months down the road. And let's go. What else do I need to do? Okay, so at the moment if I wanted to, actually, I will just turn it into a parser. So I asked for a derive feature within clap, and that will provide me this ability for me to derive the parser trait from some structure, which actually is going to generate some code based on the type definition, which is going to save a whole bunch of boilerplate. And I can say that this is a command and its name is wet. And you can think of it, if you have suggestions for a better name, we can call it something else. You're more than welcome to suggest something, and we can add other arguments. And these don't have to be on separate lines. But I've got a really itchy eye. I'm kind of annoyed. Whether in your terminal and long about is nothing. So we now need to kind of decorate the arguments themselves. And if I provide some context here, so number of days for the forecast. And the question that I am going to ask you is, if I wanted to add a latitude and longitude field, what would you suggest? So there's for people that already know CLAP, think about what you would do if you wanted the user to be able to specify a longitude latitude pair, which is actually quite annoying, say in Bash or like within the shell. Or if you want to specify two arguments, latitude, longitude, but then you need to ensure that they are either there or neither of them are there, just for like an extension exercise for people who are quite bored already. And we're going to default for no time. So we provide this default value t, and we'll say 0. And I can already get something working here. So it's not much of a utility. I can say args and then parse. And this will return some value. It's interesting to me. It's kind of curious that it doesn't return an option, sorry, a result. But I believe that's because once you parse will, let's go have a look. I think what happens if it breaks is that it panics essentially. I'm fairly certain that if the arguments don't match, it will print out the that's not quite accurate. Try parse. There is a way to actually get an error back. So I'm okay. I'll just keep my mouth shut about the error handling. My expectation though is that it will print out the help message and just blow up. And I can actually print out some of these arguments. So I'll change what I print to. And I've given my code a field days, and I'll dash, and then I want to. There are 2 dashes, which means that the next arguments, or the arguments to the right, are sent to the command itself. If I leave them out, Cargo thinks that I'm asking for help, which I'm not. I'm asking the thing that Cargo is compiling for help, and I'll get out the help message. And here we see, I'll add -q. Whether in your terminal, usage, wet, options, number of days, and help. By the way, I asked for an extra feature, which is to change the width depending on how wide the terminal is. And that means that this actually prints out nicely, which I think is quite nice. And so Conrad has made a really good point, which is that you can actually add validators, for example, which would be quite useful, for example, if I wanted to require that people provided fewer than, let's say, 10 days in the future, which I think about is sort of the maximum that you could ask for a weather forecast. There's your so I did actually ask people to suggest alternatives to the command name, and And wet is kind of a silly name, really. But so now it's called forecast. Unused import. So usage wet. Oh, that's unfortunate that that didn't work. I wonder why not. Anyway, I should push on, otherwise I'm going to get myself into trouble with time. See if that changes anything. Clear, cargo, clean, and rerun, recompile everything, and try to use the new command utility name. The usage, it's now forecast. So, but Spiel, well done. And that hi, the hi from China. It's nice to see you, like all the way over there. Doesn't Rust already have something like Python 5? I think so, maybe not. The Rust actually data science space, like isn't as comprehensive, I think. Although it's rapidly changing, so my information is out of date as to that kind of library. But I really want to dig into it. I should continue to build my app. So let's move forward. I said that the first thing was to create a CLI with actually, we've actually got some structured data here. And I said to people, what you should think about is if you wanted to provide, say, latitude and longitude, how would you do so? I'm going to cheat, at least for right now. And I'm going to define I'm going to just use I'm going to use a constant. And that constant will be an if32 probably. And I am going to provide the location of pretty close to where I am. As long as I get the latitude and the longitude the right way. So negative 41 degrees. I'd be curious if anyone can find this. And longitude of 174.7. It's not actually where I live, so you're not doxing me by revealing where this is, but you can probably find the town if you wanted to go and look for it. And so this is where I'm going to always search for. You can extend this utility yourself by providing other things. The reason why I can't just say a city name, like I'd love to be able to say Sydney or Dusseldorf or Montreal, is that we don't have a geocoder. So a geocoder is a utility which will take an address or some natural language description of a place and return a specific coordinate. And I wonder if anyone has there we go. We got it in one. So I live slightly further north from Wellington, but it's the capital city, and so that's where we're going to be there. What was the decision to pick clap over X flags? I know clap better is basically the answer. It's not, there's no principled reason why. There is a slight principled reasons which isn't involved specifically with the library itself, but it's almost as a way to say thank you or to acknowledge the maintainers of CLAP and their participation with the CLI working group and the development of the what is it? Well, there's like a command line apps book, and that was written by people who are part of the CLAP project, and his name is Ed, but I've forgotten his last name. So I I've just sent the actually, here's the URL of the book. rust-cli.github.io/book is supported by the CLAP project. So that's why I chose CLAP. I'm going to be curious and look into some other thing, but I'll not do that here. So there is a comment, like quite a good one, to say that I might be able to just call a name. There is actually a built-in geocoder as part of the Open Weather Map API. However, its documentation currently lists it as deprecated, and I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of a couple of dozen people. Kind of embarrassing. So I don't want to use it. So Ed Page is the gentleman's name, and Ed is a very helpful individual and seems to be everywhere. And I appreciate Ed's contributions to the Rust community a great deal. Okay, so we've got longitude, got latitude, and we now just need to be able to interact with some API. And how does one do so? Well, there are multiple ways. We could do it manually. I'm going to not do so. I'm going to add cargo, another like a third-party package called request, and this has many features, of which we don't need very many of at all. One of them we will need is JSON. So it will be able to go and parse the JSON for us. And what else should I bring in? There's one thing that's going to look like a bit of a cheat. I'm going to bring in the synchronous blocking API just because it's a little bit simpler than the asynchronous one, because I don't want to do, I always find that if you try to get people started on like bringing in the whole of the async ecosystem, people tend to cry slightly. So I'll avoid that. Now, I don't know whether or not it's important at all, but I may as well bring in the ability to like deal with compressed assets as well. So now I have the that library in there. There's actually another one that I want too, and that is .inf. Now I have a .inf file which contains an API key, and that will be useful. If you do go and try and screen grab my API key, as soon as the stream ends, the API, that key will be disabled. So it won't be, you won't be able to you won't be able to cause too much damage. Okay, let's go. Where do I go now? Okay, so we need to use request. So I'll just compile the code, and I will take some, just basically like a stock standard example that we will go and fetch from the request like the documentation, and then we'll mold it to our own uses. So how do we do so? And just 1 second, I'm just getting something done off the screen. I feel like, I'm a bit like a cheating magician by having stuff on the wrong side, but that's the beauty of having multiple screens. So here's this thing request. It provides a fairly simple API. We call get, and then we get this await thing, and then we extract some data from the request, and then we await that's completion. Now that is kind of fine, but still clunky because we've got these await calls, which are useful and important, but add some cognitive overhead. And there was actually like one question that we had in here, which is like, do you mean as in that you have to do. I said before that we have to bring in the whole of the async ecosystem. Specifically, yes, you will need to bring in Tokyo. Tokyo is an implementation of the async runtime API. It's complicated, but essentially there are 2 or 3, depending on how you look at it, different ecosystems of async in Rust. It's kind of strange. It's not bolted. The implementation of the runtime isn't part of the language, and so different systems are making different trade-offs. The one that 95% or more people use is this thing called Tokyo. But there's a simpler way, he says. And I always like this. The request client for applications wishing to make only a few HTTP requests, which is fine for us, right? Because our utility is going to make 1 or 2. The request blocking API may be more convenient. Interesting. Okay, so this is nicer. Now we have our request on 2 lines. Request blocking, by the way, this requires the optional blocking feature to be enabled, which we've done. And so now we can go and get the body of the Rust website and print it out. So, and I'm just going to print out slice. Actually, I'm not. I wonder what will happen now. This isn't returning a result, so I just have to change the method signature of the main function itself to say that it may return some sort of error. And what have I done wrong? Cannot find insert. That doesn't make any sense. Need to bring in the trait. That seems unusual. I probably have a whole bunch of people in my comments screaming at the screen saying, "What on earth are you doing?" Okay, it looks like we've got something compiling, which is handy. Now, conveniently, Rust loves to bring in 300 libraries when you want to do something really simple. It turns out, though, that even though it seems simple, interacting with the internet is very, very complicated. We're getting a whole bunch of compiler warnings because we're not using anything, but this looks a lot like the website, which is handy. I need to explain some syntax because if you haven't seen Rust, I've just gone and scared you. So yeah, this on the right is the HTML from the Rust website, which is useful. A result object is an enum, so it has of 2 options. One is an OK, or the standard state, and we're going to be providing what we call, the term is unit type, but it's essentially the value that represents nothingness. It's kind of empty. And this sounds odd. Box dine error. What is that? Okay, so if you have not used systems programming, the term box can sound odd. Box, I like to think of it as more like a portal, for reasons that I'm just about to explain. Inside the functions, cheeky. No, that's true, right? So I've done something really, really naughty, which is gone and added more complexity to my program, which is actually unnecessary. So, but I will justify my reasoning very shortly. Okay, so what is this? So a box is a one step back. We need something that will deal with a dynamic trait object. A trait object is something that implements some trait. In our case, we are implementing the error trait. It could be any error, but the problem that Rust faces is it doesn't know how much memory to reserve for the main function itself. It turns out that Rust is very, very particular with its memory use and will always try to allocate things on the stack. If you don't know what the difference is between the stack and the heap, don't worry. The stack is essentially local variables, and the heap is essentially everything that's not a constant. Kind of. The technical details are significantly more complicated, but box is a way for you to put a reference inside as a local variable and have that connected to some data that is stored outside of the function, which we happen to call the heap in systems programming. So that's why I like to think of it as like more of a portal than a box, because it's kind of a way to teleport from the local data to the kind of teleport from the stack to the heap. Anyway, I suppose this is less relevant. The reason why it's actually not strictly necessary here is because if I were to just say I would return a string, and I ask the compiler, please compile, it would say, no, 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 no. I'm not returning, you're not never returning a string. You are returning a request error. So request provides an error type that its functions return. Now, our original implementation with box said that anything that can become an error, like anything that implements error, is okay. And so if we had tried to add, let's say, parsing or file system IO, we could just have gotten away with that straight away. But now we get back to our the compiled program that actually runs and goes and downloads the something from the internet, which is handy. Okay. Sorry, sorry if this is annoying and distracting. Hopefully it's useful to somebody. Our next job is to actually call this API. I will pause there for questions and just check in and see how is everybody doing. Is there anything that you would like to you'd like me to expand upon? Because I guess we're going a little bit deeper now, and allow me, by the way, to so I've got no one saying, Tim, please explain this to me. So I am going to show you how to look up the documentation for, we no longer need this trait, for use .inf. So .inf is the as a third-party library that we are using to interact with a file called .inf in our directory, in our it's actually sitting right here. Now inside there is my API key. So I would like to be able to bring this into an environment variable and then have it read by clap. And so I previously at docs.rs had request, and so now I'm going to go to .inf. Actually, I don't think that will work right there, but presumably I can just bring it into this one, and we get a function .inf, which seems like kind of what we want. Oh, there we go. It loads it into the environment variable, and that's all we really care about. So we should put this at the start of our program. Before we have parsed our arguments. Now we also need some way of interacting with, the reason why we maybe want to do that before we've parsed arguments is that there's a way to tell clap that you should read from the environment variables as default values if we haven't specified them on the command line. It works together quite tightly. And now what? So I wonder if I can just this. Now it's gosh, I'll just unwrap here actually. So this is not a good thing to do, but it's saying that if you fail to read from the file system and you've got a disk corruption, that my program will crash ugly in an ugly way, which I don't care about. If I don't have permission to read my .env file, I should have been smarter at writing it and with the correct permission bits. Okay, so now how do I actually interact with the environment? So within the standard mod library, there is an INF module, and I want to be able to get out that. So docs.rs has third-party libraries. If I go to doc.rust-lang, go to stud, as I think it's more conventionally pronounced, and I go to inf, the inf module, and there's a function in here that I care about. I don't really want to. And what I'm going to do is this is probably not as useful as I would like. I'll just do it anyway. So I'm just going to do this manually. The one that I'm looking for is that if key does not equal like API key, which it does, then continue. There's only one, and here I am just going to what am I going to do? Some sort of option. Okay, so what I've done here is, it's not happy with me. Cannot assign twice to a mutable variable. Rust will always prefer safety and requires that you opt in to mutation. What I've done here is provide like a none value of an option, and there is a question mark around, well, what do you do if you've got none here? Like, if API key is none, well, now we have a big problem, and we're just going to panic. Wrong. Need. There's a better way to handle errors that we'll do with later, and but now we have let's assume that we have an API key, and then I can actually unwrap it in a really ugly way, because it just reassign the same thing and just I don't like this way of doing it, but it's workable. Hopefully it's understandable what we're doing. We are essentially overwriting the option with the actual string itself, and that way we won't need to actually unwrap in the future. Now, the API so it's how we do this. Actually, it's up to us. I'm going to do it, I suppose, in a relatively bad way, and that is, but it's something that's kind of useful to remember, that we can use just normal string parsing in Rust, and let me show you what I mean. So there's a format macro, and the format macro returns a string. And here is our API map. Forecast, there's our latitude argument, and the latitude we will bring in from up here, lat. And longitude we will bring in from on. An API key we can bring in from API underscore key. And units metric. If you avoid units metric, by the way, Open Weather Map returns you units in Kelvin. And I was very confused as to why I was hundreds of degrees out when I was testing this, but it was quite funny. But there's my URL. Now I can request blocking. What can I get? That's my URL. And I think I'm fairly close. Cargo. Run. We actually are not using arguments yet, but we do have some text. So congratulations. But it's text. It's not JSON yet. What we would really like, actually, by the way, I'll cargo run, and then I'm going to do something interesting, which is pipe it through JQ, just so you can kind of see what it looks like. But it's actually, it's it's not valid JSON. It's because it's actually been decoded so that when it prints out, it is all escaped properly, which is actually in our case not super interesting. There was another argument which we provided in our arguments, which was the number of days. And I think if I go back to the documentation from by the way, it's awesome to see that there are some people that actually are ridiculous and think, you know what, we cool? Like connecting to a weather API. Like that's a cool example. That's actually a really cool example app, something that provides immediate utility, and I get that. So that's cool that someone else likes it as well. And hey, thanks very much for hanging out, Conrad. And I will see you later. Okay, so let's go to Open Weather Map and talk about and just double check how we provide the number of days. So API current weather data. Oh, I wonder if I should do that one instead of the forecast. If I just say, okay, actually that's useful. So if args and its days is 0, then the URL should be, I'm just going to be, this is probably likely to blow up in my face. Otherwise, we're going to call forecast. And then I was going to do something a little bit different. And then comes method. And the problem is that they're bound to have different attributes. And specifically, that long required FID is, that's okay. The 5-day forecast is what I've been using, this one here. And it provides the number of a sort of a count. And this is the number of days. And to calculate the number of days, you've got to divide by 24 by 3, which is actually 8, so that works fine. So then number of, so this count term is args days times 8. And now I bet I could just add an extra parameter, even in the wrong one, even in this the weather method, and it won't mind too much. We'll see where we get to. I wanted to change to coming from text. It turns out because we added the JSON feature, we can just provide JSON. And then that is not what I I see. I need to have a type which represents the input data. Okay, so I'm just going to use text for now, and then we shall improve it. In fact, I wonder even if bytes. I'm going to just bring back a bytes object, and this will probably look extremely ugly. I'm hopeful that it won't try and do the encoding. No, it's just going to print out garbage. Oh, no, that's actually surprisingly not garbage. Printing out the debug version of it, which is the reason why I want to, bytes cannot be formatted with the default formatter. Of course it can't. That would be too easy. Actually, it can't because it's arbitrary bytes and they're probably not valid UTF-8 in the general case. Okay, so I have this B thing, which is unfortunate because I really don't want it. Go back to text and pipe that through JQ. I said before that it was probably encoding. In fact, it's still doing all the escaping. Anyway, whatever. We have here, I can actually just call this is a much simpler thing to parse than the if I wanted to actually then the forecast response is really complicated, but this has actually surprisingly few fields, so I'm going to try to really quickly create some structured data from it, just to kind of demonstrate how we can play with the so current way API documentation with the fields. We've got a so my terminal, so my apps are kind of fighting with each other now. Okay, so we've got coordinates. Oh gosh. And this contains longitude and latitude, which the problem with Rust, really, when you try and do this kind of thing, is it's all of a sudden Rust starts to look really annoying. You need to define all of this stuff whereas if you were just returning, like if I was playing in Python, it just kind of all dynamically work. And this is a bit boring, but hopefully you won't mind. It's probably U32 rather than I32. Main is string, let's say, description. also a string. There's probably another way of doing this, even within the weather is a weather, and base is, it looks like a string, and then I've got main, which is, I'm just going to call current weather main. This probably looks extremely irritating to anyone who's kind of watching. It's not exactly like primetime news. Like, I wouldn't feel watching someone coding is very fun, or at least he says. Fun is the wrong word. It's like, I don't know if this is particularly informative. Just me typing out any of this. I'm going to just see if I can currently the main. The other thing that I'm going to need to do, because I only care about the temperature, let's say, and I don't care about the sea level or ground level or the humidity. Humidity would be fun. I'm not going to worry about anything else. DT is interesting, by the way. So DT, it is not delta time, which I thought it was. It's the timestamp, but I don't remember why. It is an abbreviation for something silly, data calculation. Fine. And okay. Let's see if that will be enough. Now, it probably won't be, because I'm live and because life is good like that. So what I need to do is derive a few things. I need to derive serialize or deserialize, probably from the Serde crate, and and from body. And this is actually a very good use for those AI tools, by the way. It's like, oh, can you please go and create a thing that will return the right stuff? And it would, yeah, it would totally know how to interact with this open weather API. And so we get this problem is not, we get a compile error because we need to implement some traits. Current be weather, but we also need to implement debug. And I haven't actually brought Serde into scope, I don't think. And and I'll need to add the derive feature. And clear. So now if I pull this one, I should be able to, I also need debug. Okay, just while I go on, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff which is kind of boring, but I'll explain what blocking means, because blocking is a really strange term. It's really technical. It has a very precise meaning, but it's not explained very often. And a blocking, let's say, blocking means that your operating system, it means that your application is waiting for data from the operating system. And this sounds kind of weird, because it looks like nothing has happened. Like, it looks like your application is working fine. But it turns out that computers are really fast. And so even waiting 3 nanoseconds is not 0 nanoseconds. There is a time at which the CPU could be performing other instructions, and though that time is time at which your process is blocked from, or your thread, to be more precise, I think, is blocked. So we need to bring in sudo deserialize, which means that sudo is going to teach the Rust compiler how to take some raw JSON and convert it into a Rust type. Now I think that, well, that's not very useful. I think that the error has fixed, or I say fixed. I think that we're okay. So I wonder if we cargo run this. We might get a thing that actually compiles. Ooh, invalid type. I expected U32, but I didn't get that. Fields in the structure. Cold word is never used. Now I'm really curious because I want to see invalid type map expected U32. I wonder if I've done this wrong. I'm going to close this down because that's no longer relevant. And then I'm going to go look back at request and go and figure out how it is that I can just extract data from JSON. I hope you won't mind too much. But feel free, by the way, to ask any further questions that you might like. I am also here to answer those. And so we need to bring in some type. And the type needs to be accurate. Now, there's a question. This is not a very good error message. It's trying to decode it, but it can't. Now, line 1, column 46. This is of the original input data, which isn't particularly useful to me. I wonder where I've got U32s here. And I'm just going to say you're a string. I expected a string, but I've got a map. Now, that I wonder if I can just bring in this. Huh. Okay. No, I'm getting confused. And it's going to be extremely boring for me to figure out how to fix this. I wonder if I can just try to do more, see if I can get any of it parsed. Oh, this is extremely frustrating. And so what we would really like is like printing out more of the output. And so this is the irritating thing about, let's say, about Rust, is that you don't have the same degree of like sort of this really nice interactive feel as you would with, say, a Python or a JavaScript or Ruby. You could just be sitting in the REPL, like making API calls, and then Now we've got this response object. Now what we want to be able to do is turn it into a string. Actually, I am not going to. What I'm going to do is, I really wanted to fix it. Actually, I am going to and I really want to fix this. I'm sorry if this is extremely irritating for people, but if you're still with me and you want me to if you're kind of rooting for me and you're like, hey, Tim, you can do it. Let's try and figure out. Try and figure this out together. I don't actually think that I will be able to. Do it. But I might. Internal error. Well, that would be that would be why it would not work. So that was not a that was not a response that I was expecting. I'm going to try this one more time, and then at least at least I was a little bit. No, it's broken. Yeah, I am very unsatisfied, by the way. So this is a bad message for 404. I hate the idea that the error message actually turns up in the body of the API request. I feel like people have forgotten what HTTP even is. Also, it's a 500 if it's an internal error. It's not a 404. So we're getting a 404 not found, but it's actually internal error. What the heck? Angry. Oh well. Sorry, team. Your curl still has a method in it. I am wrong. Sorry. I can't blame them. Okay, so now I have gosh, now it's me. That's the problem. That's unfortunate. Okay, so here is the data, and it is actually valid JSON. So the problem is with my code. Now I want to fix it. So coordinates. Let's just see if I can just get the coordinates first. So when I try and parse out the current data, and I'm really confused because I thought that it said I can't get ID out. So coord is a map, but I don't know how to represent a map. I don't think. I think that's what it's trying to say. Even though I've got longitude and latitude here. Body is not found. Okay, that's a different problem. I can fix that. I'm going to try and get this one back though. Why are you unhappy? Cannot convert response to. I actually think should current weather found a response. What? Oh, I've got a semicolon. Hooray, we've got coordinates. That's awesome. I feel like I can just do one field at a time and just... Oh, I get a whole bunch of debug errors. So, sorry, like unused stuff. Now, what I want, okay, so that's good. What I really want is the weather. The weather is a list. Aha. So the weather is not one weather object, it's a vector of weather. Oops. Integer 803. I expected a string. Why do you not? Why? So, so I expect that interestingly, so on the Rust side, the problem there was that this 803 is in the JSON a number. In fact, JSON formally doesn't have a distinction between integers and floating point. It just has the number type. Anyway, so this looks like a number to Rust, and so, or at least to Serde. And so Serde says it's not a string. Even though you could presumably say it might be a string, you know, or you could just kind of just use it as like, you can't pretend. Oh, look at that! We've got a weather. Broken clouds. Hooray! We should also get the temperature. Where is the temperature? Is it not in the weather? Oh. Main temperature, 14.62 degrees Celsius. Aha. So that's in here, temp. Main. Do I care about base stations? I wonder... Okay, so what we're going to try and do is print out the weather today. We're only... And we want to print out the body... actually, we can't do forecasts yet. But we can print out we actually don't care about the coord, really, do we? Because we know where we asked for. But we do care about the weather, the first weather, 0, and then description, I think we care about, and then we also care about temperature. So the weather is weather main temp. Now, if I run cargo run -q for quiet, I should get clouds at about 14 degrees. Ooh, whole bunch of compiler errors. Aha! 14.62, light rain. Not raining where I am, but maybe further south it's raining. And so, yes! I got it. And I encourage you strongly to continue to explore. Rust does have its quirks. It is annoying, at least it feels that way at times. But I honestly believe that Rust is a extremely versatile programming language, and you can use it for tasks that you would traditionally use a scripting language for. And you'll find that distribution and keeping things alive is going to be much, much simpler. It has been a real pleasure. And so I'm hoping to do more of these. Please follow whichever channel you'd prefer. If you have topics that you would like me to cover, you're more than welcome to send me a message, and I will look into it. I can't promise them because something's really hard and very hard to pack into like an hour. But this one has been heaps of fun and I've enjoyed it a lot. And thanks for everyone's comments. It's been really nice to see everyone. I will see you goodbye. I mean, I will see you later. Take care. Oh, we just had a question just before I hand off. What is the usual way to carve out a structure to capture JSON by looking at the description of the API? So what I did just then was exactly that. I had the API documentation, and then I was essentially creating a Rust struct which mirrored that documentation. There are description languages which enable your programs to dynamically introspect what the API is doing. That's my understanding of, say, Swagger and a bunch of others. Or there's one other main one, I believe. However, what I ended up, so that's where I started. But what I found useful was actually just using curl and interacting with the database in a shell, and then looking at what the data was that it actually returned from actual invocations. Okay, and I am. I'm going to sign out. It has been absolutely wonderful to chat, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Those people that arrived at 4 a.m., I hope that was worth it. Take care. Bye.